Hey everybody, welcome to Vigilant Citizen. My name is Josh. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to try this message for the second time, and now I'm all paranoid about this mic and all of it working. So I've tested a couple times, and I think we're good. So I wanted to start off today with got a comment on my last video from Michael Moran from Dublin, saying, always a man of common sense, God bless. Well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. God bless you as well. Always good to hear from our friends across the pond, from anywhere, and I'm glad that I'm just having that sort of reach. So thanks for the comment. My message today is pretty simple. I'm going to try to shorten it from the last time I tried to make this video and share this message. My special guest who was here can't be here this time, so we'll get her on later. But basically the message goes like this: don't listen to children. So it's a little deeper than just that, right? Really what I want to talk about is your principles and your values. And so real quick, the difference between a principle and a value. A principle is something that's a universal truth over eons, over the epochs, over time, that's always been true for civilization. So it might have been true for ancient Mesopotamia, and it's still true today. Such as, one example that I see online is, if I tell you a lie, you might not trust me anymore. That's a universal truth. You're not going to trust me. Values are more of an individual guiding or guidance, so that you know how to act in the world as it is today. So a value might be, I value time with my friends and family, and others might have different values. I value fixing cars. It's very oversimplistic examples, but so principles are overarching. They're sort of cemented in civilization, and your values are what guide you through your own life. So hang on a sec here. I'm going to open this. Yeah. Today's video brought to you by another sugar-free soda. My dentist always asks, why are your teeth always so clean? And I'm like, well, I don't drink soda. Well, when I do, it's the sugar-free stuff. So that's the whole secret. That's all you got to do. Just don't drink soda. So when we're talking about principles and values, I think nothing stands out to me more when I'm driving in the car and I stop at a red light, and in front of me is a car with a million bumper stickers that has Doctor Who and Star Wars and Star Trek and, I don't know, Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings or whatever. And I just look at that car, and I think the driver of this car is lost. They're trying to find something. They're trying to find principles or even values in TV shows and movies that have been written by people. And I was in a bookstore. My wife and I were in a bookstore a couple weeks ago, and we saw a book called Jediism that was written by the guy who founded the new religion based on the Star Wars Jedis, which I think is completely ludicrous and ridiculous. However, this is a person who's actively trying to find something. He's trying to find truth. He's trying to find it where he can. Now, the result of having removed God from society ultimately leads to this, right? When Nietzsche said, God is dead, he wasn't joyful about it. He wasn't saying it to be happy. He was saying that, well, now that God is dead in society, what are we going to replace it with? And so that's why we see so many people turning towards Harry Potter. What are the lessons we can learn from Harry Potter? Yeah, there's lessons we can learn from Harry Potter, for sure. A lot of these stories are rooted in ancient truths. We've been telling stories since ancient Mesopotamia. Since Adam and Eve bit into the apple, right? So stories by people have intrinsic value because we're seeking those truths and trying to teach them to each other through stories. So I'm not sitting here trying to discount people who like Doctor Who or who like Star Wars or anything like that, even if it's not necessarily my thing. But it's important to know that those values that you're finding, or those principles that you're finding in movies and TV shows, are written by people, so they're fallible. You see this all the time with, I know J.K. Rowling came out and said something that the Twitter mob just didn't like, they hated, and they turned on her, right? They all loved her, they all loved what she had to say, and then she said something they didn't like, and then they turned on her. That's another area where I think seeing people who don't really know their principles or their values, you see them struggle with, is they will say something on Twitter and they will say it with moderate conviction, and then the Twitter mob turns on them and suddenly they're apologizing for what they said before. That's somebody who doesn't know what they believe in. They don't know what their own principles or values are, and they will take a left turn or a right turn. They'll switch them around based on a whim, based on feeling pressure, right? So it's really important to know your own truths. Excuse me, I cannot believe I just said that, but I'm going to leave it in because I need to retract that, because your truth, my truth, I don't like that, because I will say from my perspective or from your perspective, but saying my truth or your truth implies that there is not an objective truth that we can all aspire to. That's a scientific method, right? Which we see today, a lot of people just rejecting outright, and so we get so we have more problems in society because of it. But that's a discussion for another time. So anyway, about those Twitter apologists, people who make apologies on Twitter, well, then nobody ends up liking them, because nobody likes somebody who's just going to flip-flop all over the place and go wherever the wind carries them. So another thing I see on Twitter that I find interesting is these corporations who, during the previous month, will change their logos to have various colors on them to represent a certain segment of the population or somehow support them. But if you go and look at all of their accounts, because a lot of times they'll have different geographical accounts, or accounts for different geographical regions, all of them will have those varying colors on their logos, except for the Middle East. So do they really believe that? Or are they just trying to use it to make more money? Is that their value, right? And I think for a lot of these corporations, they're just jumping on social bandwagons to increase their profits. Seems to be working in some cases. But that's not their value. Those aren't their principles. Their principles and their values are just strictly profit related. So don't fall for that. So I guess to take it back, why I say don't listen to children is because they don't know what they're willing to fight for. They don't know what they're willing to die for yet. That's what a principle and values can lead to, right? You start getting an idea of, here's what I will die for, here's what I will fight for. And children just aren't there yet, and they don't necessarily have the critical thinking for it yet. They haven't experienced enough to really know, what do I really believe in? What would I fight for? And so when you come across somebody who's younger, who comes in with these strong ideas, but you know that there's problems with them, take them seriously, right? You should take them seriously. But what I like to do is just ask them probing questions to help them think about it and help them learn some critical thinking skills. This isn't to say that I'm manipulating them to believe what I believe. I don't think that should be your goal when you're having a discussion, especially with somebody who's younger than you and doesn't understand the world the same way that you do. Your job or your responsibility might be to guide them so that they can have critical thinking, they can find their principles, they can find their values, and you can help make them a better person like that. So take them seriously in that moment, even if you don't take their ideas seriously, because they're kids. Their ideas, they're a little crazy, right? Or they're a little out there. They're just they're swimming in naivety or a young ignorance that they need your help to get out of. So if you're not sure what your principles are or your values are, maybe you're not the best person to talk to them. Maybe just tell them, I don't know, and listen to them, and that's okay. So people who say that we need to lower the voting age, I completely disagree with, because kids don't know. They just don't know. They don't have experience. I would even say only now in my mid to late 30s am I starting to understand, what would I fight for? What would I die for? What are my convictions? What do I feel strongly about? What do I know is true? What do I know is not true? But if you had asked me 10 years ago, I would have had a pretty good idea, a better idea than I would have 10 years prior to that, but not as much as I do today. And I think it takes this long to start gaining some wisdom. Not to say that I'm the wisest person out there or anything, but there's an experience and a wisdom that does come with age, and the older I get, and I know I'm not even that old, but the older I get, just the more I see that. So, and I see that with my friends and my family who are older too. There's a certain disappointment that I experience when I run into somebody who hasn't gained some of this wisdom with age, because they're still lost. They haven't found it, and I think it's our responsibility to try to help them too. But typically, maybe not typically, but a lot of times they're set. They're done. They're going to believe what they believe, and so that's unfortunate. I think you should always be growing, always be learning, always be willing to question. Be willing to question your own principles and values, but when you've got them and you know what's true and you know what's not, defend them, be vocal, speak up for them, and don't let anybody tell you that you shouldn't, or that you can't, or that you should just shut your mouth. That's not what God put us here on this earth for. Speak the truth, and not your truth or their truth. Speak the truth. So, all right, that's all I have for today. Thanks for jumping in. Thanks for listening. As always, I will post I'll include in the description a link to my other channel. I'm probably going to go play some games right now after this. So thanks for your time. Leave a comment, send an email. I always appreciate the conversation. See you next time.